Welcome to the Grit Growth Podcast. Commit to conquer, lead your life, leave a legacy, gather your grit, and let's get after it.
All right. Hey, Chad, thanks for joining us today. How's it going today?
Yeah, doing well. Thanks for having me, guys.
Good. So, Chad Parisleaf, really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today about your journey and your business. Can you just kick us off with a little introduction and background on who you are, what you do, and how you got here?
Sure. How long you got on the who you are question? That may take a while.
As long as you need.
I'll tell you a little bit about Parisleaf, and then we can get into it. So our firm's a branded digital agency. We predominantly specialize in major fundraising campaigns for nonprofits. Unbeknownst to Matt, which we'll talk about in a sec, it's really fun repositioning for our firm that we did a couple of years ago. And been in business coming up on 13 years in June. Started the firm when we were the ripe young age of 23 years old, and we were kind of at that age of piss and vinegar that you couldn't tell us otherwise, and so started the business because we had nothing to lose. It was low startup cost to get it going. So it's been a wild ride ever since.
Awesome. So started with nothing.
Come on
then.
Come on, what, Matt?
That's it. We just kind of
nothing to it.
Just got it started. Come on, 23, piss and vinegar. What were your toils, man? You look back on that, like that first year. What was your challenge?
Oh man, I got tired of working for the man.
At 23, I'm tired.
At 23, well, I've been working for the man. I'd been working for the man for a long time. At 23, believe it or not, I've been working for the man for almost 10 years at that point. And I wasn't as focused on my college career as I was on my actual career. I'm a recession baby. My peers were coming out of school in 2008. It was a terrible time to come out of school with a piece of paper. And I came out with a generation of kids that went back to live at home with their parents. And so I got really lucky. I got an opportunity. Somebody gave me a shot, and got a chance to really invest in my career at a really, really young age. And that's what really kind of, helped my career take off. But yeah, in the meantime, I got tired of working for other people. I thought everybody, I thought I was just a broken employee, honestly, Carson. I thought it was just a really, really bad employee. Can you cuss on here, by the way? I already said piss.
You go right ahead. Whatever makes the message the most powerful.
I just thought I was a really shitty employee, and I thought I was a broken employee. I couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. And everybody I worked for, it seemed like I just always had these ideas of I can do it better, And so 23 years old, I finally said the hell with it. I'm going to throw in the towel and we'll start our own thing. So had the idea, and it was like everything kind of came into focus. And I can tell you a little bit more in depth, but we had the idea to start our business, and all of a sudden it went from, why are you such a bad employee? Why can't you hold down a job? Why do you keep telling everybody to fuck off? To oh God, this makes so much more sense now. Like I'm supposed to be an employer, not an employee. And so that's when it all kind of came together. So is that what you're looking for, Matt? There's the truth.
That was better.
You can't handle the truth.
I know Carson's going to unpack that a little bit and dive a little bit deeper, but that was better.
Yeah. There you go. I'll start just by saying I can relate. And when I went through that, Matt was my boss. So I totally.
Matt was
Carson was a shitty employee.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. So much. And, and I think that's a personality thing, but I think also how many people fall into that category, but don't pull the trigger. They don't have the piss and vinegar, they don't unleash it. Right. Yeah. And you said, like you said, the generation of went back home to live with their parents because they couldn't do anything with that piece of paper and probably a lot of debt to get it to.
Yep.
that's kind of some of the target audience of this podcast is, what was it for you that clicked that maybe we can translate to that person as well that might make it click for them? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so at 23, right, you weren't an expert. You weren't waiting. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm assuming you weren't an expert yet, but you weren't waiting to get to some undefinable level of expertise either. And I think a lot of people, and I fall into this trap, paralysis by analysis, right? You want everything to be just perfect before you pull the trigger. But you didn't. You pulled the trigger at 23 before it was perfect. Can you take us into your mindset a little bit on that?
Yeah, I mean, I have to give credit to others and give credit where it's due, and that is to a lot of amazing mentors. I had a lot of young guys and young entrepreneurs kind of paving the way at a really young age here in Gainesville. And so I think that kind of planted the seed. I had guys like Avi Lokesh from Fracture. I had, Kristen Hadid from Student Made. I had Colin Austin from New Scooters. I had Josh and his partner from Groove Shark. We had Augie Lai. We had the guys over at Digital Brands. I mean, there was this generation of young entrepreneurs that were kind of the same deal, full of piss and vinegar, wanted to go off, do their own thing, dropped out of college back when it was still cool, kind of gave the middle finger to school and just said, I'm going to go learn this the hard way. And so I think that kind of planted the seed of like, man, if they could do that, like, why can't I? I mean, keep in mind, like Facebook hasn't been around that much longer than our firm. So like we're starting our company in a similar era to a Mark Zuckerberg,
Right.
And you got these 20 somethings going, why can't I go do this? Right.
Yeah.
So I think that was part of it. But then, it was a combination of that with having a great business idea and then having really great mentors to kind of give me the push that I needed. And for me, that was my dad. That was my parents. My parents put it really simply. They were like, look, it's just you and it's just, at the time, it was me and my girlfriend, my wife and business partner now. And the deal was like, you don't have extra mouths to feed. You got nothing to lose, like now is the perfect time to go off and start this business because you have literally, like, if you had made $1,500 a month, you could pay your bills and live on yellow beans and rice and cardboard, right? Like you would be able to survive just enough. And so I think it was the inspiration of other people who were doing it and combined with the encouragement of those who had kind of been there, done that. And that was my dad. He was an entrepreneur. So.
Okay. So I think the key I really want to hammer on right there is you were willing to do that. You were willing to risk that.
Yeah.
Living on rice and beans in a cardboard box.
That's right. Yep.
Was it worth it? I mean, did it pay off?
Oh, absolutely.
Risk and reward.
I mean, I will say I probably could have made a lot more money, at least initially, working for somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
But long term, it's all come out in the wash. Absolutely. The life that we have now is better than anything I could have ever dreamed of, and so much more. We did live on yellow beans and rice for a long time. A date night for us was sharing a $5 footlong at Subway back when, that was still a thing before inflation went gaga. Right. And so, we definitely had a grind ahead of us, and we had to grind for a long time, and we still have to grind. And, so, I mean, gosh, we could spend hours upon hours talking about, just the amount of adversity we've had to go through because, we came up in a startup generation where everybody's taking on funding. They're taking on angel funding. They're taking on venture capital. They're taking on private equity. And we decided, why the hell are we going to go start our own business just to go work for somebody else? Right? Like you just end up working for investors now. And so we decided not to do that. But in the meantime, we had like nothing to our names. as far as money is concerned, as far as startup funding was concerned. And so it was literally just like pure blood, sweat, and tears, just, any sale that we could get, and then go out and build it, and then turn that profit into the next opportunity and keep the lights on that much longer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sweat equity.
Was there a point in there that you were ready to throw in the towel and go work for the man again?
Every day for about 12 and a half years. No. Gosh, which time, Matt? There were so many times. And I would say the first one was at about 9 months. So kind of backtrack a little bit. We first started our business. The plan was to be an eco-friendly online printing company. That was the business model. We were going to plant trees for every print job that we did. And then we ended up going digital. 6 months in, we realized the print industry's dying. What the hell were we thinking? We had conservatively projected $250,000 in sales for the first year. 6 months in, we're 20,000 in revenue in. It wasn't looking good. So we get this opportunity from a client who says they love working with us on the print design side of things. Can you take on my digital project? And we said absolutely, because their revenue was what their budget was more than we had done in revenue in the first 6 months. And so. Yeah. Completely pivoted, but still we're at this point, we're probably 9 to 12 months in, something like that. Hadn't really made enough money. We're still living on yellow beans and rice. We're selling our furniture. We're selling musical instruments. We sold everything but the farm because we had to grow some food, and eventually we were able to kind of right the ship. But I'll tell you, we got to a really rough place somewhere in that 9 to 12 month mark. And we just really been beat down, and it just wasn't going as well as we had planned, and as well as I had hoped, and as much as I had promised, my business and life partner, Allie, what was going to happen. It just wasn't coming together. And there was one day where we had just had this crazy dry spell of sales. It had gone on for a couple of months. It was pretty bad, and we just had such a hard time selling initially, and but we had to cover payroll, and we didn't know how we were going to do it, and it just happened. And we wake up one day and we're in the negative, but our bank had covered our payroll, and it was just this sinking pit in our stomach. We were talking thousands of dollars, which at the time might as well have been millions of dollars to us now, right?
Yeah.
And we just said this is it, and we're driving home. We're completely demotivated. We left work early that day. It's 3 o'clock. We're mapping out. All right. We're going to call all these people and tell them we failed. I got to call, some people that I promised that I would, really make a good go at this, that I'd provide a good life for my family. And I got to go tell them that I was wrong, that I failed. And anyways, we were on a walk. We lived in Hale at the time. And we're talking about how we're done. That's it. And we turn a corner, we run into this guy, and our dogs start jumping on him. And the guy looks at me dead in the eyes, says, "What do you do?" And it just didn't even say hello. Hello, what's your name? Nice to meet you. What a lovely afternoon. None of that. He just jumps right in. What do you do? And I said, "Oh, well, we own a print and design company is what we were calling ourselves at the time." And he says, "Great, don't quit." And I'm like, what the fuck, man? And he goes, "Yep."
You had the angel come down and just
don't quit.
Smack
This guy ended up being the number 2 person at 3M. He was the president of international sales, and he became one of my first and earliest mentors. But yeah, we called him the Parisleaf Angel for a long time.
Wow.
And so that was the first time of many that we have hit some really tough brick walls. And, there's a lot more to that story. 24 hours later, I was at a simulcast. It was the Entre Leadership simulcast with what's his name, the get out of debt guy or whatever his name, Dave. What's his name?
Ramsey.
Yeah, Dave Ramsey. And at the end of this whole day, you know, he starts screaming at people, you know, don't you quit. Don't you dare quit. You know, don't quit. Your country needs you. I need you. And I'm like, I'm crying. Okay, Dave, you know, and don't go into debt. Thank you. And he walks off stage.
Yeah.
That was the very next day. So, you know, there have been some moments where, you know, how you explain that you can't, you know.
So that was a really, you had two very timely messages given to you, right? And it was kind of like, if that motivation wasn't there, if those messages weren't there, would you have quit?
I probably would have.
So for the entrepreneurs listening to this, you know, what do you tell them? You know, is it mantra? Is it voice? Is it?
I mean, I would say we need people. We need people who've been there, done that, and we need to be vulnerable with each other, particularly when we're down. And we need to be willing to let other people lift us up. That would be my message, because I wouldn't be here on this podcast if it weren't for people, and if it weren't for great teachers. I mean, I just keep coming back to that. It's just teachers, great mentors. Because I mean, I decided to follow my career instead of following a college career at the time, you know? And so all I had was people who had been there, done that. You know, all I had was learn school the hard knocks. And so, so I would say the major lesson there, number one is people, but number two is don't quit no matter what. You know, if you're listening to this and you're thinking like, man, I'm done, I'm bummed out, whatever it is, like, I think, I read this recently. It was an article, basically just like statistics on like what is the number one contributor to success when you're starting your own business, and it's resilience. Mm-hmm. It's an ability to get back up. Yep. And so I think that moment, that experience, what that taught me was take the idea of quitting off the table entirely. Take it out of your mind entirely. And I learned that if quitting is not an option, then all of a sudden 100 other doors open up. Mm-hmm. You know, quitting can always be one of those doors, but if you close that door, you seal it shut, then there's 100 other doors that open up that you never even thought could open up, because you just take quitting off the table. And it's going to be hard. Oh man, it's going to be hard. I mean, we have suffered as much as one can. Like this business just like tortured us at times. You know, it's scary and it brings up a lot of fear, but it has also been, it's provided this incredible life for me and my family, and it's been absolutely worth it. It's been worth every bit of suffering.
Yeah. Well, and if you would have thrown in the towel at 6 months or 8 months, right, then you wouldn't have got the divine intervention at 9 months. So maybe you got what you needed when you needed it, because you were still there to get it, right?
That's right.
You wouldn't have had the opportunity otherwise. And so the research shows, like you said, resilience in business. Really, that's with any success story. It's the same with pro athletes. There's research on spelling bee champions. Basically, the IQ is less of an indicator of a winner, or consistent winners, than time spent studying. So the hours of work translate more so than the raw talent.
And then I would add to that the EQ, right? The ability to have the positive self-talk and go, hey, you got this, you know, like take quitting off the table. We're going to get this done no matter what, you know, and you get knocked down, you go, it's okay, we'll come back next year. And you get knocked down again, you go, it's okay, we'll be fine, you know, and the ability to also do that for everyone around you.
Webster, didn't you just give a speech about IQ and EQ? And did you tell Chad to tee that one up for you so you can knock it out of the
park? No, I didn't, but I do appreciate it. But absolutely, and that's self-regulation, right? It's self-awareness, but then your ability to regulate that, and you know, and I kind of want to talk about that energy side of it, because when you take quitting off the table, the energy that you're putting into of, am I gonna quit? What's gonna happen if I quit? Quit consumes energy and thought, and when you remove that, now that energy has to go into how am I going to succeed?
Yeah,
now you, like you
it.
said, you're going to open up all these other doors, but those doors were so hard to see when you were focused on, I'm just going to throw in the towel.
Yeah. I would liken it. Do you guys ride motorcycles or even bicycles? You're riding a bike, and the idea when you're riding a motorcycle, you go to take a U-turn. The bike is going to go wherever your eyes are, and the same thing goes for when you're riding a bicycle. You ever notice like you kind of get to the edge, and the tires are going to go off, and if you look at it, you're like, don't look at the edge, don't look at the edge, don't look at the edge. You're going to fall off. That's exactly where you're going to go. If somebody goes like, don't fall, don't fall, don't fall, you're going to fall, you're going to fail, you're going to fail. Eventually you're going to be right,
Yeah.
And then fear goes, see, told you.
Yeah.
Should have never tried it, So I think if you go the opposite direction, that, I'm listening to Man's Search for Meaning. And I think really just the core premise is about this guy who made it through concentration camps, and I think the core premise there is the guys that were like, hey, I'm going to get out by Christmas, I'm going to get out by New Year's, I'm going to get out by my birthday. Those are the ones that perished because Christmas, New Year's, birthdays came and went. But those that said, hey, I'm going to get out, I'm going to survive, I'm going to have meaning and purpose in the process, and really just embrace suffering. Those are the ones that survive.
Was it embrace the suck?
Mm-hmm. Embrace the suck. Absolutely. Yeah. Yep. Life. I mean, I don't care who tells you otherwise. Life is suffering. I think we are so hardwired in society to chase happiness, and it's just one happiness hit after another. But eventually that's got to catch up, and life has to be somewhat suffering as well. I think it can be both.
Yeah, it's I think it's ancestral too, and Darwinism, it's fighting for survival meant fighting to be comfortable, and then now we're so comfortable that it's we're inundated with it. It's a comfort crisis, right? That's another book for you if you haven't read that one.
I have.
Michael Easter. It's really good.
Cool.
But yeah, I mean, that's what we did. And so now dopamine, when we were evolving 10,000 years ago was rarely ever experienced. And now you can get it just by flipping on the TV, watching a YouTube video. I mean, it's everywhere. Man.
I drove by Chipotle on University the other night, guys. Actually, just last night, we were coming in from Atlanta. I drove by Chipotle and I see this line out the door, and I can see these glows, all this glow on people's face, and they have that angle where everybody's standing but face down at their phones. Nobody's socializing anymore. Everybody's looking for that next hit on social media or on the phones, and I hate to be that old guy, like, get off your phones, look up,
And you're not that old.
Exactly.
But
back in my day, Matt.
It's so true though. And that experience is getting more and more immersive every day. Every time a new update comes out or a new technology. I listened to Mark Zuckerberg's interview with Joe Rogan on his podcast. And it's mind-boggling the stuff that his vision for the future of Meta and that whole business structure. I mean, it's pretty intense, and Apple's doing the same thing in the background. They're all on a race to be the first one to do that, but that just means that it's happening. It's going to happen. It's going to be, instead of having their face down with the screen lighting up their face, it's going to be a headset, for a while until the technology gets smaller.
Eventually it'll be contacts. We're just gonna blink text messages to each other, if at all. So and the apps, you'll be able to touch the apps in the air. It'll be like you're looking at a hologram, but from the outside there's nothing there. It's not too far off, man.
Crazy stuff.
Wally.
Yeah,
exactly. Cautionary tales, man. Disney Plus is full of them, and we just don't even know it. It's crazy.
I was going to be a villain for Halloween. I was going to go as Man from Bambi.
Go from what? Go as what?
Man. from Bambi. The villain in Bambi was man.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
and man entered the woods.
Ferngully too, right? Same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah. So
go ahead, Carson. Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, so you said a couple of times that we started the company when we were 23. That's just you and your wife as the pair,
correct,
right?
Yep.
So how much how certain were you that she was the one to be business partners before you got married?
So we became business partners before we became for life partners. She's my girlfriend at the time. We started Parisleaf, and there was no doubt in my mind. I mean, the main reason why we started Parisleaf, or one of the main reasons, was because I had lost my assistant at my previous job, and I had observed that Allie and I were an amazing team, and I tried to get my boss to hire her. And their response was, you're out of your mind. There are a few more expletives in there. That's not happening. And because they said no, that was what made us go, well, hold on a minute. We can do this on our own. We don't really need them. Like, why don't we go start our own thing? And so that was a real gift for them to say, you're not hiring your girlfriend as your assistant, which that is a completely reasonable thing. As an employer now, I would say the exact same thing. You're out of your effing mind. But in the meantime, that was just kind of one more click that got the ball rolling, that made us go, you know what? Like, what if we went off and just kind of did this on our own? So, so I was really positive. I still am to this day. I remember, a couple of years in, there's a pretty, well-known angel investor in town that when I told him our setup, that we were 50-50 partners, not 51-49, not 49-51, 50-50. And he said, you're out of your mind. This will never work, And so I heard that many times throughout our tenure. And that to me is just fuel, man. There's something that goes off inside of me when anybody's like, that's not going to work. And be like, middle finger, I'll show you,
Yeah. Watch my dust.
Insert middle finger here. And so, so it's been amazing. I mean, we would not be here without her. There's so many of those moments, but there's no doubt in my mind, like, Parisleaf wouldn't be here without her. I needed somebody who's going to be as committed to this thing as I am. And, Allie and I are just both super committed. I think that there have been times where it's been too heavy on the business partnership and not heavy enough on the marriage. And when that happens, we correct it, and we kind of course correct, and we get back to marriage first. Because if the marriage isn't first, then the business partnership's screwed.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it's been amazing, honestly. Everywhere where I'm broken or I am inadequate, right, on organization, operations, just putting framework, systems, processes in place. That is her strong suit, and vice versa, right? Like, everywhere where I thrive, people and vision, culture and sales and relationship management. That is like, could not be further from her passion. So it really is it's a very perfect, very symbiotic partnership.
So it's the classic traction couple.
That's exactly right. And actually, we are an EOS firm. So we operate as entrepreneur operating system, and I sit in the visionary seat. She sits in the integrator seat. But, I've always been clear that while, in an org chart, you have, one above the other, it doesn't work like that. If anything, it's flip the org chart. It's me down at the bottom. And then if everybody buys into the vision, then we succeed.
Yeah. Servant
Absolutely.
leadership.
Yeah, that's right. Yep. Yeah.
So for other entrepreneurs out there who are with their maybe girlfriend, boyfriend, other significant other, what would you recommend to them as you get into business together? You kind of mentioned this course correct, and I don't think there's been anyone else we've interviewed, Carson, that are a life partner, business partner, life partner combination here. I'm just curious about the dynamics of that, staying together as life partners, staying together as business partners. It's not just spite because people told you couldn't do it. I don't think was the motivation there, but
no.
What could you offer up as advice?
Oh, I mean, the first thought that came to mind is don't do it. I mean, we got really, really lucky. We're a really strong team, and we both have this incredible team mentality. I mean, we had all the right ingredients, but I do kind of mean that. I say that somewhat jokingly. And Matt, I know you're going into business with your wife, but I always encourage you to do so cautiously and make sure that the roles are really clear. Actually, that guy Ted, the OG Parisleaf angel that throughout the don't quit. One of the first things he said to us is there can only be one final decision maker, right? So we may be 50-50, but we had to decide who's that final decision maker going to be. And I would say that we both are the final decision makers in our various specialties, right? So I think that's really crucial. The other part is make sure the partnership stays tight first and foremost. It has to stay the first priority. And then, other than that, I mean, I say this pretty often, it's not really advice, but more, just kind of an expression that, we often say, going into business together with your life partner is going to either speed up a divorce or speed up a healthier marriage. Right. It's great. It is going to bring a lot of your difficulties as a partnership to the surface. And we've been really fortunate that it has enriched our marriage, that our partnership is tighter than it's ever been and will ever be had we not, and would have ever been had we not started the business together.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So when you were 23 and you guys were making this decision together, did you have that self-awareness of your own strengths and weaknesses and hers and of each other at that time?
I will say, I mean, Allie and I had both been through a lot. I mean, we were not your typical 23-year-olds at that point. So there was not that we weren't 23-year-olds. We still had a lot of growth to do, but there was a lot of self-awareness. And, what we found was that, and I think I just mentioned this, but, we both grew up playing team sports, right? And so we had this mantra in our partnership that whenever one of us was mad at the other, we would always hold up a hand for a high five and go, same team, and we would always remind each other always that we're on the same team, and whenever we get in a tiffs or one's defense, the other's aggressive, whatever it is, any one of us can call that kind of, safe word, just same team, and it just brings us back down to the center point. But I think we had both done a lot of work on ourselves, and that was part of what enabled the partnership. And then, just kind of that team mentality. And then again, everywhere where she was strong, I was weak, and vice versa. So I think it was a lot of the right ingredients,
Yeah, so I would venture to say that that's a really rare quality to have that much self-awareness at 23. I know I definitely did not. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs, young, excited entrepreneurs, when you say you did that work on yourself, what was that work on yourself? What was the discovery there?
Well, I've talked about this publicly enough at this point. There's no turning back once it's on the internet. So I mean, I turned into a full-fledged drug addict, alcoholic by the time I was 19. And so at that point, I had really rebooted my life and started over. I'd almost died. I was definitely, heading in that direction quickly. And so, I ended up getting into recovery at a really young age, and I had started that journey. And Allie had been on a journey of her own that I won't share. I mean, it looks very different to mine, but that was my journey. That was a big part of what forced me to grow up really fast, and it really has, I think, accelerated a lot of the way that I've seen the world. So I give a lot of credit to just the recovery process. So
yeah, I certainly didn't mean to drum that up, so I apologize for that. But
you got no need to apologize. Like I said, it's already out there on the internet. I'm like,
right.
that was it. There's no going back now, Carson.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we did drum it up though, and I'm glad you were vulnerable enough to share it, because it's a big portion of my mission here, or my message, is that I believe that anybody can come back. I believe that there's so much opportunity out there for success, whether that's entrepreneurship or not, however you define success. I think that there's opportunity and mentorship out there to be had if somebody's willing to have that resilience, like you said, the perseverance to go get up and try again, try one more, the power of one more. Yeah, I'm really glad you were willing to share. I mean, I think it's important.
It's a really important part of my life. I mean, I've been at it now coming up on 17 years. And this isn't just like he stopped drinking one day and then his life turned around. It's like it's been an ongoing journey. And so much of who I am at my core is really driven by that recovering addict, recovering alcoholic. So, that, and I want people to know, because I think it's really easy from the outside looking in to just see the end product, right? And I think Steve Jobs said it best is, becoming an overnight sensation was easy. It just took a lifetime. Right. And I think it is so easy to look at, this kind of polished, finished product and go, wow, I mean, not that anybody's looking at me as a finished product, but
or
we
polished.
Or polished for that matter. But we can look at, other people that are whatever our version of success is and go, man, like they made it look so easy. Right. And I'll tell you, I've asked a lot of my mentors and teachers along the way, things like, man, you seem so confident, how'd you do that? They're like, I don't know. It just happened. It's like, and it's like, that's just bullshit. That's just way too simple. But, I think a lot of it is, you just you do go along and you get to learn yourself better and you do the work and it just kind of naturally happens. And, it just kind of becomes a one day at a time thing. And every single day, it just gets a little bit better. So, one of the things that we really try and harp on at Parisleaf is the principle of Kaizen. Like everything that we do is about Kaizen, and Kaizen is this Japanese principle about getting 1% better than you were yesterday every day. Just always trying to improve. And I think that really comes from the spirit of its founders, because that's something Allie and I are always trying to push for, is just how do we always continue trying to get better? How do we always continue to try to become more self-aware? How do we always continue to try and become more the kind of people that we want to be, which is kind and generous and thoughtful and giving and present, as opposed to just a shell of a human being that's loaded
and going through the motions. It sounds like there's a very deliberate intentionality and conscientiousness and a systematic approach to getting 1% better. It's not just like, I type emails at 60 words a minute today, so now I need to do 60.6 words a minute tomorrow. It's a lot more deliberate, and holistic than that, right? And I think you alluded to, people have a tendency to go through life and go through the motions, but there's a much more intentional approach to be had.
I think that's right, Carson, especially at Parisleaf. But I will say in my life, it is not linear like that. It is not like you do this and then you do that and then you do this. Like it's topsy-turvy, it's wacky, it's all over the place, and it's very much like, okay, this is the next thing we're going to tackle. And then I get hit with something else. Okay, this is the next thing we're going to tackle. I don't think it's as formulaic. I have found that our business, it has to be, though. And that's the difference. I think in life, it shouldn't be, but in business, it needs to be, because that offers others stability. Because we tried to be, kind of wacky, topsy-turvy, and just figure it out. We got this, and it was a reinvention of the process every single time. And that is exhausting. And we burned a lot of people out that way over the years. But we found that when we got a lot more linear, a lot more formulaic, people did become much more safe and secure and understanding of their role and what success looks like. And they were able to operate within the bounds of what, what that checkbox can look like. And then how do we take that and then make that 1% better every day? But again, from a much more like intentional formulaic approach.
Yeah. So there's a balance there between, like you said, parameters and creative freedom.
Yeah.
You're kind of teeter-tottering between the two.
Yeah. I mean, look at it. So we've got a 4-month-old at home. His name's Wilder. What's up, Wilder? If he's listening to this, 20 years from now,
hopefully.
And if I try to tell Wilder, like, all right, buddy, like today you're going to become potty trained, he'd be like, yeah, in your dreams.
Right.
I just don't think life
Here,
is
let me
like
pee
that.
on you.
Yeah, exactly.
Watch this, Dad.
I just don't think. Don't think life is like that.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'll show you. It's not even going to be I'll show you. It's just life just doesn't work that way,
Yeah.
And while that's like such a simplified example, I think life very much is like that on a more macro example that, we just kind of deal with punches as they come along. I mean, you never know when you're going to get that call. What that call is, you also don't know.
Yep.
Right.
And or if you will get that call, right? I mean, I think for a long time I was constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop, and I was so afraid of it happening. And then when it finally happened, I was like, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, But the time spent worrying about the shoe dropping, that was 10 times worse.
Yeah.
Right.
And so finally, I just decided, you know what, this is part of the process. The shoe's going to drop. Get used to it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's converting that energy, worrying about, or contemplating, should I quit, to how do I succeed? It's the same thing. You're taking energy away from the negative and pushing it to the positive.
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
Awesome.
What's next?
Yeah. That is awesome.
Right.
So we spent a ton of time on personal journey and got away from business a little bit.
Oh yeah, is that what we're supposed to be talking about here, guys?
Whichever.
Well, it's all the same that we've discovered, right? I mean, we go from your business to your life partner and being in business to again, not quitting, but what I heard is you're not quitting on yourself at 19.
Right.
That's where the first not quit happened. To me that was a you talk about a pivotal point, to say, okay, again, I'm going to pull myself back up, and you know what? I'm not going to work for the man anymore. I'm going to work for myself. I can be my own boss. We're in the red. How we're going to make payroll, and hearing some words of wisdom and kind of that rally and the mantra of don't quit. You've kept it going, and look where you're at now. Now, your life has exceeded your own expectations, and I think back to, it's not just about money, but how you live your life and the happiness associated with how you're living it. Being a whole person, not just being a shell. So what is success, right? Is being an entrepreneur about just making money for yourself?
Yeah.
No, I think it's about the pride in what you've created. It's about a balance of, and you've proven it, a balance of both your personal life, marriage, and business, and providing for others. It's all of that.
I love this question though, Matt, because I think how everybody defines success is so different, and the way most of society defines success if I could boil it down to one word, it would be more.
Yeah.
That target is constantly moving. I remember asking one guy though, when did you know you were successful? And he said, oh, when I had $1 million in cash in the bank. And I thought, man, that's like such an oversimplified version of what success is. Like, what about what kind of person you are? Like, what kind of partner you are? What kind of father you are? What kind of, person you are in the community, and the kind of service that you do for others. And so I think, you got to tick a lot of boxes. So, I love asking people, like, what is enough? Like, I think that is success and enough. I'm pretty sure synonymous. And that is like such an interesting, what is enough? And I remember one of my teachers, actually, that was his number as well. Totally separate person. I want to have $1 million liquid cash in the bank. And he called me on the day he hit that number. And he said, the second thought that came to mind, guess what it was?
2 million.
Double it. Exactly.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, here he was. He'd been working his whole life to get to that number. He finally hit it. And all of a sudden, it's not enough. So what's success?
Yep.
More. And so I think the goal is, how do we move the target instead of away from us? We move it toward us. And we realize that I'm already successful. I'm successful at what I do every single day. Even if I close the doors, it's success. I mean, like, what's her name? Founder of Spanx, being asked every day around the dinner table, what did you fail at today? Right. And Sarah Blakely, and realizing that, failures need to be celebrated as well. I think it's so easy to just, again, kind of look at that polished version of this overnight success. Mm-hmm. And it's just not like that. It's one failure and, 2 steps forward, 1 step back at a time. And eventually, you get there, but, hopefully you decide, no, success is already here. Because if I die tomorrow, what's it for?
Yeah, absolutely.
We're going deep, guys.
That was deep.
But as an entrepreneur, as a 23-year-old, did you have this level of understanding at 23 when you were full of piss and vinegar?
I had the preliminary, very rudimentary understanding of this.
Right.
One of the greatest lessons my dad taught me is, if you do what you love, the money will follow. And so I realized that success is doing what you love, and that money is a byproduct. It is not an aim. So I had the rudiments of that understanding, but that was something that needed to be developed and has continued needing to be developed. I still have that thing inside of me that wants to chase, the Joneses. So, I think I had the beginnings, but it's a battle, just like everyone else. I want the newer car and the bigger house and the, bigger toys, and, I want to chase all those things as well. And it's a constant battle of, like, that's not what success and happiness and enough looks like. But 23, just the beginnings.
Yeah. Yeah. What would you tell your 23-year-old self? Knowing what you know now, what would you tell your 23-year-old self?
Yeah, I love this question, because it's a lot like, tell me about a failure that you had. And I don't think I would tell my 23-year-old self anything. And if you ask me what a failure was, I don't think I'd have an answer for you, because all of it was just learning lessons. And I wouldn't change anything. I used to have a creative director that worked for us, and he was really big on not having any regrets in life. And I would say that I've held pretty true to that, I really don't have any regrets. I don't think I would change course for that 23-year-old at all. Yep. I would just say, just continue listening to your teachers, which thankfully I did.
So let me rephrase that. Instead of what would you correct, what piece of advice, if you were a mentor to yourself, what piece of advice would you give?
Ooh. Yeah, I mean, I think we hit on a lot of, actually, I got one. Clarify the vision a lot faster. That would have been nice. I think that that took us time. It probably wasn't until we had about 10 years in that we had really clarified what we were going to do with this thing. And and I would say, clarify the vision sooner, maybe really kind of buckle down sooner would be nice. But again, perfect journey. It is about turning out destination, not to be so cliche, but like I needed to go through that lesson to know what I know now. And I'm 36. I've got hopefully another 34 years of work ahead of me because I enjoy what I do. And the painful lessons that I learned there, I'll take with me the rest of my career. So I'm glad it went down the way it did. But yeah, I think clarify the vision sooner, really lock in on something. I mean, what we've locked in on now is awesome. It's fulfilling. It's so exciting to get out of bed every day and do what we do. It's nice because it drives the economic engine on top of that. I mean, it's everything that Jim Collins talks about in his book, Good to Great. But I think that there's a lot of those kind of sages that really tried to help me clarify the vision sooner that I wish I would have listened to, but I don't know if I could have until we had the kind of aha, a couple of years ago. And then, just kind of buckling down, operationalizing some more standard business practices. I mean, it sounds silly, but like job descriptions give people security. It helps them understand that they know what success looks like and that you can measure them against their job performance. And I thought that was just like bullshit. I thought it was just like, this is just an old school way of doing things. Yeah. Seriously. It's like, we'll figure it out. Just go fast, And there were some really key fundamentals that, we've really put into place over these last couple of years. And I think it's offered our people a lot more stability.
Part of the entrepreneurial experience is realizing that not everyone can have an entrepreneurial mindset or outlook.
Yeah. Like I wanted everybody to just figure it out, just have that mentality of we're just going to get it done. But if they had that same mentality, they would have gone and done the same thing. Exactly. I'm so cliche, Matt. Of course, I would expect everybody else around me to think like that. Right. But if they did, I wouldn't have any employees.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's awesome. It's hard not to. I catch myself. Actually, my wife catches me doing that all the time.
Yeah.
So when you talk about the vision being defined in the shift, you're talking about moving from general branding and marketing and moving that into nonprofit focused primarily. Yep. Is that right? Okay.
Yep. So about 2.5 years ago, we pushed all of our chips in on red. And this is the interesting thing that, Matt's on this call. We're going to talk about that in a second because, we had this kind of aha moment where we realized oh shit, we worked on a ton of major fundraising campaigns for nonprofits. And collectively at the time, they'd added up to a couple $2 billion that we had been a part of helping raise for these nonprofits. Mm-hmm. And it was kind of this big epiphany and realizing wow, this is both fulfilling work and we're really good at it. And there's a big need for it. And there's not a lot of competition and it was perfect. But the classic quintessential fear of paring down, of niching, of focusing is if I do that, then it'll turn other people away. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting that we're even on this podcast, on this call, because Matt's a great example of that being a facade. Because, as you know, Matt is doing Bonnabelle, and that has nothing to do with being a nonprofit. It has nothing to do with the fundraising campaign. And that was after we had gone all in with our positioning, our branding, our marketing, our communications, all around fundraising campaigns for nonprofit. Mm-hmm. But we had developed a reputation for being a generalized brand digital agency. And so in the process, we've gotten a chance to continue working with folks outside of that space because the same rules apply. A lot of the same rules still apply. It's just we've been able to just get hyper focused over here and really specialize and become experts at this very specific thing. And in addition to that, we can still continue doing some work over here, like with folks like Bonnie Bell. We didn't end up working together, but nonetheless, the point stands that, there's a fear of if I niche down, if I pare down, if I focus, then I'm going to turn people away. And it just doesn't work like that. You end up really driving a lot more opportunities you can ever imagine. So Yeah. So that's been the refocusing of our firm.
Yeah, it's funny. You're not the first guest on the podcast to talk about that, niching down. And it's counterintuitive almost. But it's enlightening to hear too, and people. If you didn't hear people, person after person after person tell you that, you might not believe it, until you experience it. So
you're exactly right. I mean, we heard a ton of people, Carson. See you, Matt. We heard a ton of people talking about how, if you that they had pared their focus down, that they had niched out, and you could see it working so well. And it was and it was really smart, and they were able to become experts in their craft. And finally, we heard it enough times that we finally did it. And man, it's really paid off in a really short period of time.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. Yeah, cool. Okay. Well, awesome. I think we're coming up on an hour already, and I want to be respectful of your time, but in closing, I just want to ask you one kind of thought-provoking question for the listeners to ponder, and for you, what does grit mean to you?
Well, I think we'll bring it back full circle. I mean, don't quit no matter what. I think, success is marked by resilience, not, how smart you are. I think, smartness is a piece of it, but I think resilience is an even more important part. I think, I think just that, I think it's more than working 60, 70, 80 hour weeks, 100-hour weeks, I think that is, I think that's a fable that we all tell each other, that if I just work harder, I'll be more successful faster. And what happens is we sacrifice so much in the process, and we forget to really actually enjoy the journey. So, I think grit is also making sure that I'm doing the basics, like, eating well and sleeping well and taking care of myself well. Because just like an athlete, right? If I don't take care of my mind, then I'm going to hyperextend something. And so, I think that, I think it's all of it, but I think it's just, more than anything, just don't quit. If you know that you are doing what you were born to do, then just take quitting off the table. And I think that was, thankfully, one of the earliest lessons that we learned. And again, had we not learned it, I wouldn't be on this podcast.
Yeah. I like that caveat there. If you know you're doing what you're meant to do, in other words, if you found your purpose, you've taken it from discovery to passionate to purpose, and you're locked in, then burn the ships, go all in.
That's right.
But don't forget, life needs balance as well. Fulfillment requires balance.
Yeah. Well said.
Yeah.
Well
That's
summarized.
Great.
Thanks, Carson. Pleasure.
That's awesome advice. I'm sure people will get value from it. Really appreciate your time, and it was nice to meet you finally.
You as well, man. Yeah.
And
Happy New Year in advance for those of you that are listening to this in the New Year. Happy New Year. Happy holidays to everyone.
It will be 23 when it comes out, so we'll be off to the races, and no telling what'll happen by then.
Awesome, man. Sounds good. All right. Thanks again for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Hey, and I didn't quit on the podcast. Love you guys.
Yeah. Oh, shoot. Carson, you forgot to hit record.
Oh, yeah. No, we got to start over, Matt. No pheasants for you today, this afternoon.
We got to start over, guys. See you guys.
See you.
All right. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Grit Growth Podcast with host Carson Stefanelli and Matt Webster. We sincerely hope you were inspired by the interview and found at least one useful tool or tactic to implement in your own life. Now, level up by taking immediate action. Apply one lesson learned to your life as soon as possible to make sure it sticks. Post it and tag us to increase accountability. You can join the Grit Growth movement to restore American grit to its former glory by building an unprecedented force of conquerors, both in business and in life, at www.gritgrowth.org. and wherever you're active on the socials. Please also drop a rating and review on your podcast app, as it goes a long way in helping the movement gain traction. Now, don't let this inspiration go to waste. Commit to conquer. Lead your life. Leave a legacy. Gather your grit and go get after it.